the fortune that disappeared in 6 years, $70 million, and partly 000 square foot mansion, gold-plated gates, 2 swimming pools, a bowling alley, a recording studio, a baseball diamond, and enough garage space to make the property look more like a private resort than a family home. At the beginning of the 1990s, MC Hammer appeared to have reached a level of success few rappers had ever touched. His album, Please Hammer, Don't Hurt M became a cultural phenomenon. You can't touch. This turned him into a global star. And the money seemed to be arriving faster than anyone could spend it. But within roughly 6 years, the empire collapsed. The source estimates that Hammer's fortune once reached about $70 million. Though exact figures vary, w 1996 he and his wife had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. With reports describing millions of dollars in debt and more than 200 creditors, that fall has often been reduced to one simple explanation. MC Hammer spent too much money. But that description misses the real mechanism. Hammer did not merely buy a few expensive cars or take too many vacations. He built an entire financial structure around the assumption that his peak income would continue indefinitely. The mansion required constant maintenance. The touring operation required dancers, musicians, transportation, rehearsal space, and staff. His entourage reportedly included friends, relatives, employees, and people he wanted to bring with him after escaping poverty in Oakland. The intention was not always selfish. Part of Hammer's spending came from loyalty. He wanted the people who had known him before fame to benefit from his success. He created jobs, paid salaries, and built a world large enough to include everyone. But loyalty became overhead. According to estimates cited in the source, his total staff may have approached 200 people, with monthly payroll and operating costs possibly reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. The exact numbers differ across reports, but the pattern is clear. The money was leaving at a fixed rate, while music income was becoming less predictable. Then the culture changed. Rap moved toward a harder, grittier sound. Hammer's bright, dance-driven style no longer dominated the market the way it had in 1990. Album sales slowed, but the mansion, staff, cars, travel, and production expenses did not slow with them. That mismatch destroyed the fortune. The most shocking part is that Hammer's story did not end with bankruptcy. The mansion disappeared. The lifestyle collapsed, and the public turned him into a warning about celebrity excess. Yet the man who emerged from that disaster eventually built a smaller, quieter, and far more sustainable life. Where are you watching from today? Comment your city or country below. Press 1 if you believe Hammer's biggest mistake was building permanent expenses around temporary fame. Or press 2 if you think loyalty to friends and family simply became too expensive. Subscribe to the channel, because the next chapter enters the mansion that was designed to prove he had made it, and explains why that dream house became the center of the collapse. The house built to prove he made it. The mansion began as more than a real estate purchase. It was a declaration. In 1990, at the peak of his success, MC Hammer reportedly paid about $5 million for a large property in the Fremont Hills overlooking the Oakland area where he had grown up. The symbolism was impossible to miss. A kid who once made money around the Oakland Coliseum was now buying land above the neighborhood that had shaped him. But the existing mansion was not enough. The property already included a home of roughly 11,000 square feet, a size most wealthy buyers would have considered extravagant. Hammer reportedly demolished it and replaced it with a structure nearly 4 times larger. The new estate was designed to be unforgettable. The source describes a home of approximately 4,000 square feet, equipped with Italian marble floors, a bowling alley, 2 swimming pools, tennis courts, a recording studio, a rehearsal hall, a media room, multiple dishwashers, an enormous garage, and even a private baseball diamond. Some reports also describe gold-plated gates bearing the words "Hammer Time." whether every dramatic detail has been documented consistently or not. The central reality is clear. The property was built on a scale far beyond what an ordinary private residence required. It became a physical monument to his rise. Fahama. That scale may have represented security. He had grown up around financial struggle and watched his father's gambling problems place pressure on the family. Building something enormous could have felt like proof that poverty had finally been defeated. But a house designed to prove success can become dangerous when the proof has to be maintained every day. Construction estimates in the source range widely, from roughly $12 million to figures closer to $30 million, not including the original land purchase. The exact number remains uncertain, but even the lowest estimate made the estate an enormous concentration of personal wealth in one difficult-to-sell property. A custom mansion is not always worth what it costs to build. The features that make it emotionally meaningful to one owner may add little value for the next buyer. That problem would become devastating later. At the time, however, Hammer was operating inside an extraordinary financial moment. His music was selling at a level that made the project seem possible. His fame was global. His tours were massive, and the estate looked like a reasonable extension of an empire that appeared unstoppable. The mansion was built to say the hard years were over. Instead, it became the largest permanent expense in a career powered by income that would not remain permanent. The mansion that never stopped charging him. The cost of a mansion does not end when construction finishes. That is where Hammer's dream house became a financial machine. A property with 2 pools, tennis courts, extensive grounds, marble surfaces, a recording studio, a bowling alley, and a large entertainment operation requires constant maintenance. Every feature that made the estate impressive also created another recurring expense. The pools had to be cleaned, the landscaping had to be maintained, equipment had to be repaired, utilities had to support tens of thousands of square feet, security, cleaning, administration, food service, transportation, and property management all continued whether Hammer had a new hit or not. The source estimates that his wider staff and entourage may have approached 200 people at the height of his success. Not all of them necessarily worked inside the mansion, but they were part of the same financial ecosystem surrounding his career. Reported monthly costs range from approximately $500,000 to as much as $1 million. Those figures should be treated as estimates rather than exact audited numbers. But even the lower amount would create extraordinary pressure. Achinsute, 000 per month. Annual payroll and operating expenses could reach $6 million. At the higher estimate, the number could approach $12 million before accounting for major touring expenses, cars, aircraft, taxes, or personal purchases. The danger was not simply that Hammer liked expensive things. The danger was that the expenses repeated automatically. A sports car can be sold, a vacation ends. A one-time purchase may be painful but limited. A large permanent staff, custom estate, and international touring system create bills every month. That distinction explains how enormous wealth can disappear quickly. Hammer's operation was built during a moment when one album was selling at an extraordinary rate. The source says, "Please Hammer, Don't Hurt," and moved millions of copies, and became one of the most commercially successful hip-hop albums of its era. But the estate did not understand music cycles. It did not reduce its own size when sales declined. The staff did not automatically shrink when radio moved toward another sound. The property kept charging him simply for existing. This was not just luxury. It was infrastructure, and infrastructure is dangerous. When it depends on a temporary surge in income, the mansion looked like the reward for making it. In financial terms, however, it was closer to a company with huge operating expenses and only one major product supporting the entire structure. Once that product stopped performing at the same level, the weakness became impossible to hide. Loyalty became a financial obligation. One of the most human parts of Hammer's financial story is also one of the most complicated. He did not want to leave everyone behind. The source describes Hammer surrounding himself with friends, et relative, dancers, musicians, employees, and people from Oakland who had known him before global fame. When success arrived, he created jobs. and brought many of them into the operation. That choice is often described as reckless spending, but emotionally, it may have felt like responsibility. Sudden wealth can create an intense pressure to rescue everyone connected to the past. For someone who came from financial struggle, success may not feel complete if only one person escapes. Hammer appears to have tried to turn one career into an economic system for an entire community around him. He employed people, he paid performers, he traveled with a large team. He built rehearsal and production spaces that supported more than his own private life. That loyalty deserves to be recognized, but loyalty does not remove financial reality. Every person added to the operation became another salary, another travel expense, another responsibility, and another relationship that became difficult to reduce when income changed. A business can cut costs based on numbers. A family-centered operation faces emotional consequences. Letting go of an employee who is also an old friend is not simply a financial adjustment. It can feel like betrayal. Reducing someone's salary may mean affecting their household, children, and future. This is how generosity can become structurally dangerous. The source suggests that Hammer's touring operation was more disciplined than the public image implied. Some former dancers described rules, curfews, and fines. That means the problem was not necessarily that no one understood organization. The deeper issue was scale. Even a well-managed operation becomes unsustainable when it is too large for the revenue supporting it. Hammer's loyalty built a financial structure around relationships rather than around the most conservative business assumptions. That approach may work during a peak year, but it becomes fragile when the peak ends. The tragedy is that the same quality people may admire his refusal to abandon those close to him, contributed to the pressure that eventually harmed everyone. When the empire collapsed, the jobs disappeared anyway. That is the painful lesson inside this chapter. Generosity is strongest when it is built on a stable foundation. When generosity depends on temporary income, it can create promises that become impossible to keep. Hammer did not simply spend money on himself. He built obligations around many people. And when the music industry changed, those obligations remained. When the music changed, but the bills did not. Hammer's spending might have survived longer if his commercial peak had continued. But popular music does not stay still. At the beginning of the 1990s, Hammer's dance-driven sound, highly choreographed performances, bright visual style, and accessible hooks made him one of the most recognizable artists in the world. The source describes Please Hammer, Don't Hurt Him as a massive commercial breakthrough, with You Can't Touch, this becoming a cultural phenomenon. Album sales and touring revenue created the impression that the scale of success could continue. Then rap changed rapidly. By the middle of the decade, audience attention was moving toward harder, grittier, and more street-oriented styles. Artists with darker production, different fashion, and more confrontational identities began defining the market. Hammer's image suddenly looked connected to an earlier moment, even though only a few years had passed. That shift did not erase his achievements. It did not mean his music had no lasting value, but it reduced the kind of extraordinary new income required to support his existing system. The source describes a tour that grossed more than $30 million gross revenue. However, is not the same as profit. A large tour must pay dancers, musicians, transportation, staging, hotels, crews, insurance, management, and production costs. When the entire operation is designed to look spectacular, a major gross can still produce a surprisingly limited net return. Hammer was bringing in large amounts of money, but the money was passing through an equally large machine. When album sales slowed, the machine did not shrink quickly enough. The mansion still required maintenance. Staff still expected salaries. Existing debts still needed payment. Cars, travel, taxes, and business commitments did not disappear simply because public taste had shifted. This created the central financial mismatch. Income became variable, but expenses remained fixed. The same pattern affects many entertainers, athletes, and entrepreneurs who confuse a peak year with a permanent standard. They build lifestyles based on the highest level of income they have ever earned, rather than on what they can safely maintain across weaker years. Hammer experienced that mistake at an extraordinary scale. The public saw fewer hits and assumed his career was simply cooling down. Behind the scenes, declining revenue was colliding with costs created during the height of Hammer time. Once that collision began, small adjustments were no longer enough. The issue was not one car or one employee. The entire structure had been designed for a level of success. The market was no longer produced. The numbers could no longer be hidden behind celebrity, bankruptcy, and the sale of the dream house. In 1996, the financial collapse became a legal reality. Hammer and his wife filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Reports cited in the source differ on the exact value of his remaining assets and total liabilities, but they generally describe debts ranging from about $10 million to nearly $14 million. More than 200 creditors were reportedly listed. That detail shows how widely the financial pressure had spread. The debts were not connected to one lender or one failed investment. They reflected an entire network of contractors, service providers, employees, businesses, and financial obligations. The system surrounding Hammer had become too large to support itself. Bankruptcy offered a way to reorganize, but it also forced the public dismantling of the life he had built. The mansion became the most visible symbol of that collapse. According to the source, the estate was eventually sold in 1997 for roughly $3 million. That price was far below the combined cost of the land and the custom construction estimates described in the transcript. Even using the most conservative figures, the loss was enormous. A house costing many millions to create does not automatically retain that value. Highly personalized luxury features can make a property more difficult to sell because few buyers need a private bowling alley, rehearsal hall, baseball diamond, and massive operating budget. The property had been designed around Hammer's identity, not around the broad resale market. When it had to be sold under financial pressure, the dream house became a distressed asset. The emotional cost was just as important as the financial loss. The estate represented his rise from Oakland poverty. It was physical proof that he had succeeded. Watching it pass to another owner meant losing more than real estate. It meant losing a public symbol of who he believed he had become. His family moved through a rental period while the legal and financial process continued. That contrast was brutal. Only a few years earlier, they had occupied one of the most recognizable celebrity homes in California. Now, lawyers and courts were determining how the remaining assets would be divided among creditors. Bankruptcy did not mean that Hammer had never been successful. It meant that success had been converted into a structure that could not survive a change in income. The mansion had once represented freedom from financial struggle. By the end, selling it was necessary for financial survival. The debt that followed him for years. Bankruptcy can close one chapter, but it does not always erase every obligation. Hammer learned that years later. The source describes a tax claim of roughly $800,000 that surfaced in 2013 and was connected to unpaid federal taxes dating back to the period around his 1996 collapse. The exact legal treatment of tax obligations depends on many factors, but the larger point is clear. Some financial consequences can survive long after the public assumes the story has ended. For Hammer, the bankruptcy was not a single dramatic event followed by an immediate clean start. It was a long process. First came the decline in music income, then the growing debt, then the Chapter 11 filing, then the forced sale of the mansion, then the move into a rental, then years of rebuilding, while older obligations remained in the background. That is why the idea that someone can just file bankruptcy and start over is often misleading. A major financial collapse affects credit, taxes, reputation, relationships, business opportunities, and emotional confidence. Old decisions can continue creating new consequences long after the original purchases are gone. The source describes the tax issue appearing more than 15 years after the bankruptcy period. Imagine the psychological effect of that timing. A person rebuilds a smaller life, reduces expenses, creates new income, and begins to believe the worst years are over. Then a debt connected to the collapse reappears and demands attention again. That can make recovery feel incomplete. Hammer's second act, therefore, required more than moving into a less expensive house. It required accepting that financial cleanup might continue for years. This is one of the most useful lessons in the story. Large fortunes can disappear quickly, but rebuilding trust and stability often takes much longer. The fall may happen in 5 or 6 years. The consequences can follow someone for decades. Hammer could not rebuild by pretending the past never happened. He had to create a life strong enough to survive the return of old obligations. That meant lower fixed expenses, multiple income sources, and a different relationship with public image. The gold gates were gone. The staff was gone. The giant estate was gone. But the financial education created by those losses remained. The man who eventually settled into a quieter life in Tracy was not simply living with less money. He was operating under a completely different philosophy. Never again allow one temporary period of extraordinary income to create permanent obligations that could outlive it. Rebuilding in Tracy, after the mansion and bankruptcy, Hammer's family eventually settled in Tracy, California. The source describes the home as a ranch-style property of roughly 600 square feet on a little more than an acre. Estimates place its value far below that of the former Fremont estate, though current property figures should be treated cautiously. The visual difference was enormous. The Fremont mansion had tens of thousands of square feet, specialized entertainment spaces, extensive grounds, and a staff large enough to function like a business. The Tracy home was simply a home, no gold-plated gates, no private bowling alley, no huge garage, no permanent operation designed to impress every visitor. For many observers, that change became evidence of failure. But the quieter house may represent the healthiest financial decision Hammer made after fame. He stopped trying to maintain the appearance of a man worth tens of millions. He began living according to the resources and income he actually had. That adjustment required humility. Celebrity culture often treats downsizing as humiliation because public success is measured visually. A mansion is interpreted as victory. A normal house is interpreted as decline. But financial stability is not measured by square footage alone. A smaller home with manageable expenses can be far safer than an enormous estate draining millions each year. A life with fewer employees and lower overhead may create more freedom than a fortune trapped inside permanent costs. The source also emphasizes the stability of Hammer's marriage to Stephanie and the family life they built after the collapse. Their relationship reportedly began before his greatest fame and continued through the bankruptcy and the decades that followed. That endurance changes the meaning of the story. Hammer lost a mansion, but he did not lose every important part of his life. He continued raising children, maintaining a household, working, and rebuilding his public identity. A reality series later showed the family dealing with ordinary routines, rather than attempting to recreate the excess of the early 1990s. That ordinariness was the point. Homework, family meals, children's activities, and business meetings replaced the spectacle of the old estate. The lifestyle looked smaller, but it was also more sustainable. Hammer's recovery did not involve returning immediately to a giant fortune. It involved accepting a different definition of success. The Tracy home became evidence that he had learned to match his cost of living with his actual financial reality. That lesson may have saved him from repeating the same collapse, the second career nobody expected. Hammer did not rebuild by relying on one dramatic comeback album. He created several smaller paths. The source describes a second act involving technology, consulting, speaking engagements, ministry, selective live performances, royalties, and business relationships in Silicon Valley. That diversification was the opposite of the financial model that had failed him. During the mansion years, one extraordinary music career supported a huge fixed cost system. After bankruptcy, multiple modest income streams supported a much smaller lifestyle. Hammer had shown interest in technology before celebrity involvement in Silicon Valley became common. The source associates him with early relationships around companies such as Twitter, Square, Flipboard, Pandora, Salesforce, and YouTube. The exact nature and financial value of every relationship are not fully documented in the transcript. Some appear to involve advising, networking, early adoption, or investment rather than major ownership positions. Still, the pattern is significant. Hammer built credibility in a field unrelated to nostalgia for his biggest hit. A co-founded Dance Jam, a video platform centered on dance content. He reportedly advised entrepreneurs, attended technology meetings, and developed a reputation as someone who understood the intersection of entertainment, marketing, and digital culture. He also continued performing, but the scale changed. Instead of rebuilding a 144-date world tour with a huge traveling staff, he accepted more targeted appearances and nostalgia-driven events that could generate income without recreating the same financial burden. Speaking engagements became another source of work. The source says Hammer gave talks at universities and business events about technology, sudden wealth, mistakes, and recovery. His financial collapse became material he could use to teach others. He also became an ordained minister and participated in religious and community activities, including officiating weddings. These roles gave him more than income. They gave him new identities. He was no longer only the performer in parachute pants or the celebrity associated with one of entertainment's most famous bankruptcies. He became a father, husband, speaker, advisor, minister, and early technology enthusiast. That reinvention did not restore the old mansion. It created something more durable. Royalties from his catalog could continue. Consulting could continue without major touring expenses. Speaking could grow from experience. Ministry and community work could deepen personal purpose. No single source needed to produce tens of millions. Together, they supported a stable life without requiring enormous overhead weighing. That may be the most impressive part of Hammer's recovery. He did not rebuild the same empire at a smaller scale. He designed a completely different system, one based on flexibility, multiple income streams, and the acceptance that sustainable success can look far less dramatic than fame. Why losing the mansion may have saved his life. MC Hammer's story is usually told as a warning about excess. A superstar earns a fortune, builds an enormous mansion, supports a massive operation, and eventually files for bankruptcy. But that version stops too early. The more important story is what happened after the collapse. Hammer lost the estate, the gold-plated image, and the financial system built around peak-level income. Yet he also escaped a structure that was consuming money faster than his changing career could replace it. The strategic lesson is simple. Wealth is not only about how much money comes in. It is about how much of that money remains after the system surrounding it has been paid. At his peak, Hammer reportedly controlled tens of millions of dollars. But he also carried a mansion, a large staff, an expensive touring machine, transportation costs, taxes, and obligations to hundreds of people. The lifestyle looked powerful, but financially it was fragile. His later life looked smaller but became more resilient. A modest home, lower fixed expenses, selective performances, royalties, consulting work, speaking engagements, technology projects, and ministry created several income sources without rebuilding the same dangerous overhead. That is the difference between appearing wealthy and being financially secure. Another lesson involves generosity. Hammer's desire to employ friends and bring people from Oakland into his success was not automatically wrong. Loyalty and generosity are valuable, but helping others through an unstable financial structure can eventually harm everyone involved. Sustainable generosity requires limits. A person should not promise salaries, lifestyles, or long-term support based on the best year they have ever experienced. Temporary income should first create savings, investments, emergency reserves, and assets capable of surviving weaker years. Hammer's story also challenges the way society measures success. People see a ranch-style house instead of a 40,000 square foot estate and call it a tragedy. But a stable marriage, children raised in a consistent home, meaningful work, and decades without repeating the same collapse may represent a deeper victory than Gold Gates ever did. The humane lesson is not to mock someone for losing money. Sudden wealth can distort judgment, create pressure from family and friends, and make temporary success feel permanent. The peaceful response is education, honest financial guidance, and the courage to reduce expenses before a crisis forces the decision. Hammer could not recover every dollar. He did something more important. He changed the system that had destroyed the fortune. His comeback was not another mansion. It was learning how to live without needing one. Press 1 if you believe financial stability matters more than looking rich. Or press 2 if you think Hammer's generosity was admirable, even though the structure became unsustainable. Like the video, share it with someone building their future, and subscribe for more stories about fame, money, mistakes, recovery, and second chances.